A warm welcome to our listeners. This is Silang Global Podcast, where polyglots from around the world help us unravel the relationship between languages, science, and ourselves. My name is Peter, and today I have the pleasure of hosting our guest, Maria Freddi. Maria is Associate Professor at University Vita Salute San Raffaele in Milan, where she teaches English communication in STEM with an emphasis on health and medicine. So Maria, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So to start with, the most important question we love to ask our guests is how many languages do you speak fluently and how did you learn them?
Okay, it's the fluently that bothers me a little, but I'd like to say three. In other words, Italian, English, and German. I used to be pretty fluent in German, which I did at university, and I guess I got a certification which would probably be the same as C1 these days. German, if you know what C1, the Council of Europe proficiency levels for language proficiency. I'm a bit rusty now in German, so fluently, hopefully back to fluent soon. But yeah, let's say three. I also did Dutch when I studied modern languages at university, but my Dutch is probably A2, again, Council of Europe A2, so not quite too fluent.
Right, I see. Yeah, the I suppose the word fluently is there's not really a defined term for that. It's quite kind of a sort of a bit of an not a very agreed upon term. Probably is how I'd say it. Some people put it around B2, some people put it around B1. Some people, the moment you say a few sentences, then you're all of a sudden you're fluent. So if we've got three languages that you speak that you speak to a very high level. Are there some other languages that you have sort of in your back pocket, as you were, that you could say a few phrases in, you could maybe get around with?
Yeah, I mean, one of them would be Dutch, because I did do 2 or 3 years back at university. So definitely Dutch, which is also a Germanic language like English and German. So it's not a big effort. And I guess French as well, even though I never really studied it. But because it's so close to Italian, which is my native language, I usually speak some French when I go to France, for survival purposes, or I can read and understand even specialized French when I attend conferences. So yeah, you also probably have to make a distinction between type of skill when you talk about reading and listening, or speaking skill, or writing. So you might have different proficiency levels depending on the skill. So I do have reasonably good passive French and survival French, and same with Dutch.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point. I think people who don't learn other languages kind of are surprised to hear that someone can be at a really high level in one skill and be at a really low level in another, and especially because English is sort of televised around the world and so on. There are a lot of people who understand it really well. They can listen to it and understand it, but when it comes to speaking, they really struggle. I mean, do you find that you do particularly well in one of these skills when you learn a language? Are you stronger on your speaking normally, or stronger on something else?
Yeah, I enjoy speaking a lot. So I enjoy listening to people, and I tend to go by imitation when I'm in a foreign country, for example. So I can imitate and replicate a few words, or, formulas like greetings or thanks, things like that. So I'm usually good at retaining pronunciation in even in languages that I haven't really studied too much. And I guess the other thing, perhaps grammar, which is not necessarily a skill, or some people say it's the fifth skill. So again, that kind of grammar that that helps you read and understand what you read, for example. So I guess reading and speaking, maybe. Writing is more difficult, a lot more difficult, and listening, it requires some immersion some experience. I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess reading and speaking, which is a funny mixture of two skills.
Right, I see. No, that's true. It's normally the speaking and the listening come as their own little package, and the reading and the writing,
Yeah,
especially because reading, there's no urgency in reading, which is often
that's
what
right.
makes it a
Yeah.
lot easier. Whereas the speaking, there is urgency there. But speaking of, you said a strength was imitation,
Mm.
and so hearing your English. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, do you ever get mistaken for being British, for example? With your accent being just so authentic.
Well, thank you. Coming from someone from Britain, that's quite flattering. Yeah, yeah. Occasionally, I do. Yeah, it very much depends on how long I stay in the place. I really find it. I find code switching difficult. For example, switching between languages quite difficult. But once I'm in a language, I find it easier to stay within that language, and that also involves pronunciation and everything, I guess. So yeah, yeah. Imitation
Right.
is a big thing, and also yeah, immersion. Yeah.
And so I think where where I was going with that as well was sort of what kind of what I mean, is there a particular approach you have because of the ability to imitate a language, imitate the accent, and speak in a way that's really really clear to natives. Is a huge skill that a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to accomplish. For you, is there a particular thing you do? How do you go about trying to imitate?
Well, I watch a lot of films. I enjoy watching movies a lot in the original language, perhaps with subtitles if I'm not particularly proficient in that language. So yeah, I guess listening and also listening to the radio, listening to and to original language programs or watching films and fiction in the original language. And then the other thing is practice, of course. I guess you learn a language. The more you practice, the more and the better you learn a language. It's practice and practice and practice and practice again. So I guess that's what you need. I also enjoy some method, of course, because of my training. So I do enjoy knowing something about the mechanics of the language. I guess that's something that is useful to learn the language. If you know, in other words, probably some grammatical rules, syntactic rules, even phonetic rules. So if you can master some of the mechanics really, and then combine it with exposure to the language and a lot of practice, I guess you can learn practically any language.
Right, I see. So, do you find that you've been able to apply this successfully to the other languages you speak as well? I mean, do you have the same kind of uh, have you been able to imitate the language as authentically in sort of in German as well and in French?
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, you can even check it with the internet and everything. You can record yourself and then compare your pronunciation with recorded output that you find available for free, or that you find in dictionaries, in online dictionaries, that, or even these things like Google Translate or Chat GPT, all these automated systems that allow you to check your pronunciation, and then you can imitate, and you can check whether it's good or not. And you can even find something more sophisticated that corrects your output. So yeah, I think that works. And if you listen to a lot of original language input, or you watch many films, then you just end up doing what you listen to and what you hear. I think it's practically unavoidable. Then you might have the odd thing that reveals where you come from, or some kind of idiosyncrasy, for sure. But I think you end up really imitating and doing what people do in order to be understood. And yeah, I think so. I think so.
Right. Okay. So I mean, the next question I was going to ask you was more of a broader question about language learning, which is what your approach is to language learning more broadly. But you've sort of touched on one of the central parts of your method is kind of is immersion,
Mm.
whereas it's not one of these. It's not a case of you enter the classroom and then you kind of leave the language learning in the classroom. You kind of it sounds like you're incorporating it into your life. Is that the goal when you're learning a language?
Yes, yes, I would definitely say it is a goal. Yes, for sure. I mean, as I said, you also probably need to know something about the mechanisms, to the rules, and the more languages you know, the more you can transfer that kind of knowledge of the mechanics from one language onto another, and that is probably also very useful. But then the other thing is to go beyond the actual classroom or formal language learning setting and try and use the language, go up, travel abroad, if not find someone to talk to remotely, and just use it, and listen and watch and talk and use the language and read. Of course, reading in another language is also something that you can do anytime. So yeah, the short answer to your question would be yes, definitely incorporated into and beyond the classroom for sure.
Right, and so to what extent then is culture, or is the culture of the language important or integral, if at all, to learning it well, to being able to speak it in an authentic way?
Very much so, very much integral. And the more you are attracted to the culture of a given place, or that is associated with the language, the easier learning the language and the more motivating learning the language will be, I think. Yes. So there's a very, very large and important cultural component to learning a language and becoming fluent in that language, and because there has to be enjoyment and motivation. So if you are attracted to the culture, you want to be able to master that language, you want to be able to communicate in that language, so that you can enjoy the culture more and understand the culture more, I guess. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
I was just yeah, I'm okay, sorry. Yes,
Oh
yes.
no, sorry. Was there an additional
No,
point
no,
there you
no,
made before?
that's fine, that's fine.
Okay. Right, I
Yes.
see. So, what then do you think is the biggest barrier that a lot of people face, or a lot of people, that stops people from being able to learn a language? Because I mean, in terms of people who actually try to learn a language, especially in the English speaking world, you will find probably a lot of people have tried, but they haven't had much success. And there's all sorts of things that get blamed for this. In your opinion, what do you think is one of the biggest barriers preventing people?
I think there's a lot of myths about learning a language that should be debunked, really, because you learn a language because you want to use it for whatever reason, whether it's for reading, technical, specialized publications, or research in English, or whether you want to enjoy the culture, travel abroad, and go visit the place and be able to interact with people. So I think you have to think that you don't have to be too self-critical. You don't have to be too critical of yourself, expect too much of yourself as a language learner. In the end, it's a means of communication. So you just try and communicate with the very little language that you learned, and that will kind of fuel more language learning and more language use, and it will make you feel empowered and enabled, because you can go to Italy and speak Italian and understand what you read when you travel, and enjoy then the culture more and understand more about how people live in a given country. So I think it's a very empowering experience. Then people should think like that learning a language is like learning to communicate and allowing you to communicate with people. So yeah, don't be too harsh or too critical of yourselves and just try and use whatever language you want to learn or you need to learn. Of
Right, I
course,
see.
motivation is usually, I mean, if you want to work in Germany, for example, then you have, strong motivation to learn German. Or if you want to enjoy Italian food, you might have strong motivation to learn Italian. So I think, yeah, just try and use it, try and communicate. Don't be
Yeah,
too
yeah.
shy. That would be my advice to people learning English.
So, among the languages that you speak, is there one in particular that you think is uh, well ideal for or better at communicating scientific concepts?
Well, definitely English is really good at articulating scientific concepts, probably because it's so concise and synthetic that it really lends itself to developing expressions and vocabulary and coin new terms, new scientific terms even. So I don't know. I was thinking, just think of the jargon, the lingo that was used during the pandemic, that everybody started using. Terms like lockdown or even long COVID are used in languages other than English, including Italian, just because they work so well. So it seems to, I don't know if it's probably, it might be for the some of the word formation rules in English that allow you to, that are very flexible, allow you to coin new terms, new expressions. And maybe I wonder if it's because it draws from Germanic and Romance languages as well. So it has all sorts of possibilities, it seems to me, to create new expressions that work well in science.
Do you find though that the English has are there any weaknesses to it? So do you find that there are parts of English that don't articulate something, be it sort of conceptual or abstract, as well as say another language? And if so, what is that?
Well, maybe talking about philosophy. I don't know. Maybe German worked better with and works better with philosophy, but I'm not sure. You are the specialist, so. Uh, but I think for the hard sciences and in general, even social sciences, but even the humanities, it seems to really allow for a lot of expressiveness and variety of expression, and it's a creative language as well, and it's huge. It has huge vocabulary because of these Germanic slash Latinate or Romance mixture. So I don't see too many limitations or flaws to the expressive possibilities of English.
Right. Okay. I see. So, well, looking to the future, then, for the final question is, how do you think technological advancements will affect language learning, be it for better or for worse?
Well, I guess people, I mean, learners will learn languages from remote, so they will learn languages, from the, like we saw during the pandemic. So maybe the teacher will be anywhere in placed anywhere in the world, and you'll be staying in your room and learning the odd language. I guess artificial intelligence will definitely play a role, because maybe people will learn languages with the help of ChatGPT or all these artificial intelligence developments. So yeah, definitely the remote dimension, I think, will be enhanced by or will be more and more a feature of language learning, because you can get immersion even without actually going to a place, but just using the internet.
Yeah. In fact, from my own experience, that's been, I can testify to that for two reasons. I mean, first, it being my job is teaching online English, but the other being that's, so me as well as so many other people have taken to applications like, italki or Preply or so on. There's loads of applications like this now where you can just have a
Yeah,
wealth
yeah,
of teachers who you can get, and you can also often
right.
get get lessons at a cheaper price as well. Because there's so
That's
much
right.
competition,
Yeah.
and the teachers teaching from the comfort of their own home, and so it's definitely I agree. When it comes to remoteness, it's made things a lot more accessible.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I think we unfortunately have to finish there. But was there anything you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, I guess perhaps universities, especially, should maybe support language learning more than they're doing, especially within languages for scientific communication. So and multilingual education. I guess that is something I it's worth perhaps saying that we need more support as language teachers and language learners, and more investment on the part of universities to promote language education.
Great, yeah, great note to end on. Thank you very much. Well, Maria, thank you once again for coming on the show, and all the best. Take care.
Thank you very much.